This is episode number 55 of the Fine Dining Podcast. Welcome to Ontario.
This is the Fine Dining Podcast. The Fine Dining Podcast. For foodies who love travel and travelers who love food. Here's your host, Seth Ressler.
Hello and welcome to the Fine Dining Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Seth Ressler, and this is the podcast for foodies who love to travel and travelers who love food. Now, normally, every week, we go to a different city and talk to somebody about the local culinary tourism scene. But this week, we are actually going to an entire province. We're covering a province. And when I say province, you know that doesn't mean America. We're going up north. We're going up to Ontario, Canada this week. We're going to talk to Danielle Brodhagen of the Ontario Culinary Tourism Alliance. She is not only very involved in culinary tourism up in Canada, but she is actually coming to speak at the Taste Trekkers Food Tourism Conference in Providence next month in September. She will be part of the panel discussion that's going to be hosted by Gail Ciampa, the food editor of the Providence Journal. So we're very excited to have you, Danielle. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And I know you're actually relatively new to the Ontario Culinary Tourism Alliance. Tell me a little bit about what the Alliance does and how you wound up there, because I know you were doing a lot of exciting things in culinary tourism even before that.
That's right. Well, the Ontario Culinary Tourism Alliance is a not-for-profit organization, and we work with farmers and chefs and everyone in between in the food tourism industry to promote Ontario and a tasted place within our province. Before OCTA, so Ontario Culinary Tourism Alliance, I worked for Savor Stratford and promoting food tourism and developing food tourism there for 5 years. So developed the Savor Stratford Culinary Festival and food trails there, from the chocolate trail to the bacon and ale trail, which everyone loves. And now I've moved to Toronto to work with the different regions within our province.
So when you were doing this for Stratford, you were doing this on a city level, on a county level?
That's right. Well, the city, and then we expanded to involve our farmers as well. So it was Savor Stratford Perth County was the initiative, and I worked out of the tourism organization there and really worked on a sort of grassroots level to get our stakeholders involved. So that was, again, farmers, chefs, and culinary schools, hotels, and really focusing on local food and what we could do in our region to bring tourists and attract food tourists there, knowing that we had a strong food identity already.
Talk to me a little bit about food tourism, because my sense as I've been putting together this event is that food tourism is something that people have been doing for a really long time, but it's something that hasn't necessarily had a name until recently. Like, people didn't call it anything, they just did it. Is that accurate?
Well, I would say so, because, I mean, if I look at myself personally, I mean, I traveled, 15 years ago quite a bit, and I would always look forward to where I was going to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I would look for something that was unique to that region. And so if it was a chef that was really well known, or if it was a famous food area in Thailand, or maybe street food in India, I wanted to find out what that place was known for and then have a taste of it. But I didn't really know that I was a culinary tourist then, right? But I just knew that I liked food and I looked forward to those meals.
You used to think of, New York City, San Francisco, Las Vegas, maybe New Orleans, obviously places like Paris. But you're actually seeing some really exciting culinary things happening in smaller cities and often even out in the country these days. And I get the sense that some of these smaller cities and other areas are recognizing that food is a way to attract visitors to their area.
Absolutely. Well, I think, regions and cities, they are understanding the economic impact and benefit of culinary tourism, even of local food. We have a lot of stats in Ontario that support, if you support your local farmer or even invest $10 a week into local food, what that does for an economy. So, because culinary tourism is the fastest growing segment of tourism at the moment, it's very easy for municipalities to see that economic impact and the benefit. Now, what's really important for us in Ontario is that the regions really look at what their assets are and what is unique to that region, their terroir, their sense of place, and then we build their tourism offerings from that so that it stays authentic.
I think you used a really key word there, which is, authentic. People are looking for an authentic experience. They're not looking for the chain restaurant. They're not looking for, they want something that they can only get there. and that really reflects the place. So talk to me a little bit about, what you guys have done, both at Octa and maybe what you've done at Stratford. I mean, from the moment you sit down and you go, okay, we should use food to attract visitors and to reflect, what's happening here, then what do you do?
There are, steps that we would recommend that you go through with your stakeholders. I mean, that's the first thing, is getting together key people in the community that are like-minded and interested in local food and building your destination as a food tourism destination. And that's a lot of the work that we do here at Octa, is that we work with regions that have that interest, and then we guide them through those steps. So bringing your stakeholders together, identifying those assets. We have a tool that's proprietary to Octa called the EAT tool. It happens to be the experience assessment tool, and it actually allows us to go in and look at properties or individual businesses and assess them through the lens of a culinary tourist. So we use a computer software program to do this, and it sort of spits out a number and tells us if a business is ready, if they're market ready. And on a regional level, that's really great because it gives us an actual map of all the destinations. So, for example, in one region, we saw that there were a lot of honey producers. On a map, it's a cluster. And so we recommended to that region that they actually create a honey and combs tour. So a honey tour, and then they combine that experience with other assets in that region. So that's really looking at what your assets are and then building on that, bringing together your stakeholders, and then from there doing some product development, whether that's on the regional level, so creating trails or tours, or more on the individual business level.
And when you say stakeholders, I mean, who are we putting in a room? Chefs, farmers, artisanal food producers?
Yeah, exactly. So there's what we call a culinary tourism value chain, and those include any business that can have a taste of place. So B&Bs, hotels with a food and beverage component, culinary schools, farms that may have a roadside stand or maybe have a visitor experience, restaurants and chefs. Those promoting local food are, more market ready, obviously. Wineries, breweries, cideries, attractions, events that have a food component. So we look at all of those businesses.
So tell me a little bit about what's happened there in Ontario. The organization's been around for about 5 years. I know you're relatively new to it, but what have you accomplished in that time?
We have people that are on staff here. So Rebecca LaHoupe, for example, the executive director, she came from Prince Edward County and, basically created that region and their culinary tourism story there. And that, was 10 to 15 years ago now. So in Ontario, there's been pockets of work. And then since the Ontario Culinary Tourism has come about, we've really helped direct those regions and help them understand what food tourism is. So we see some regions that are doing very, very well, and events seem to be a really great way to attract tourists and to get a place on the map, on the food tourism map. So you can go into the Kawarthas. There is Savor Simcoe. We have a ton of festivals and events around wine and food in Niagara. Prince Edward County, I mentioned. Stratford as well. And we're also funding a lot. Organizations are starting now. So like the Ontario Craft Ciders Association, for example, craft breweries. So it's like, the snowball effect. Once a lot of people start coming together and, more ideas, and it just sort of builds and builds and builds. And we're finding that partnerships are key. So regions working together and the chefs and farmers working together to create different experiences.
That's fantastic. And I know you guys have gotten so good at this that you now have other regions around the world who are coming to you and saying, hey, can you show us what you're doing? I mean, you're consulting for other places, right?
That's right. Yes. So Rebecca was recently in Ireland doing some consulting work. Iowa, it's a very busy time. But for us, I think it's that hands-on experience that our team has in developing regions and successfully. So, Prince Edward County is definitely one of Ontario's best-known food regions, and Stratford quickly became that as well. So it's that hands-on experience. We've done it before, and that's allowing us to consult and give really hands-on feedback and suggestions.
It sounds sort of intuitive. I mean, you say food tourism, or you say culinary tourism. I mean, I think people get an idea of what that is, but are there any misconceptions that you've run into about what culinary tourism is?
I think just remembering, looking at your business or your region with fresh eyes and and taking away any of the knowledge that you have about your region, and really knowing that people need still that story. So, when they're looking for information on the internet, are you giving them the history of food or farming or in the region, and remembering that they're looking for that well-rounded experience around, and usually around local food, because it has to be authentic. And I think a lot of restaurants kind of get messed up with that, because they think, okay, well, I make really good food. But if it doesn't have that taste of place for us, we find, you can get good food anywhere. And we know that a lot of people want that taste of place. They want to taste, for example, when they come to Ontario, they want to taste that pork. Like, why is it different? It's the terroir, how the pigs are grown or how they're raised that makes it different. And what is the story? I think often businesses forget to tell that story. They just assume that people know it.
All right, so let's talk about the story of Ontario. And this is the first time we've tried to cover an entire province. And this is the province that is north of the Great Lakes. I mean, everything from Minnesota all the way over to Vermont. And before we get into Ontario, I know you've got a trivia question for me. So tell me what it is.
So I wanted to know, where and when were the first butter tarts made in Ontario?
The first butter tarts made in Ontario. Butter tart sounds to me like something in a Disney movie. So what is a butter tart?
A really great butter tart has a buttery tart sort of crust, and it's, like a little mini pie. And the inside is made of butter and sugar, syrup, and usually raisins or currants. And it's a very Canadian thing. Sometimes pecans are in there, and it's really, really, really good. Very sweet. And we actually have butter tarts throughout the province that differ a little bit. And I'm excited to tell you when they were first made, or the first recorded recipe.
Are butter tarts typically a breakfast food, a dessert?
Dessert. You'd find them at bakeries. And if you go to a bakery in a small town or a Mennonite bakery, from where I'm from, in the Stratford area, you'd find them for sure. And that's typically where I like to look for them, because the pastry would be homemade and the inside filling is really, really gooey. And they go through so many that they're always fresh.
So butter tarts are something that bakeries take a particular point of pride in up there.
Absolutely.
All right. And everybody's got their own signature butter tart?
Yes, we've seen some interesting ones recently. Last year at the food festival that I ran, Savour Stratford, we had a bacon butter tart that sold out within hours. One of the vendors had, and it actually won the dessert award last year. So yeah, there's definitely some innovative recipes out there now.
All right, and so your question is, when is the first recorded recipe for a butter tart?
When and where?
And where? I'm gonna have to think about that. I don't know. So we're gonna think about that. We're gonna come back to it. While I'm thinking about that, let's talk about Ontario. First of all, Ontario's a big place. So let's say I am a tourist and a foodie, and I'm coming to Ontario. Walk me through some of the cities or counties that I really need to put on my list of places to check out for food.
So you probably fly into Toronto, our major city here in the province. And Toronto, well, Canada as a whole, we're known for our multiculturalism and the melting pot that Canada is. So Toronto has done a really great job at welcoming different identities to the city. So we have pockets of really great food, like any big city. But I think that that's something that we do quite well. There's a lot of street food and food trucks. So if you want really, really traditional Indian food, for example, you can get it. We also have a ton of celebrity chefs in the city. So I think you'd want to make reservations ahead of time so that you could visit a few of them. And then I would rent a car and go out to some of the counties, so some of the more rural areas of Ontario. Heading towards Prince Edward County, so that would be east. You could then go on the Taste Trail in that region. And so this is an actual foodie trail, and there's also a wine trail through that region. And you can stop off and taste along the way and have go on different wine tours. I would definitely check out Norm Hardy's in the county, one of my favorite places to hang out. They have a pizza oven, authentic pizza oven right at the winery. It's a beautiful spot. He does amazing Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And then I would maybe go on to Ottawa and I would check out a restaurant called Atelier, and it's Marc Lepine's restaurant. Really amazing chef, well-known, worked in Chicago at different restaurants, and he's, one of our stars here in Ontario. And I'd come back towards the Toronto area, and I would go up into the Kawarthas and Simcoe sort of area, and there's the butter tart trails in those regions, and you can get a taste of Ontario's signature dessert, I guess, if you will. And then around that area, there's some really great lakes and, again, roadside farms that you can stop off. The great thing about Ontario is that once you get into the rural parts of Ontario, you'll be driving on the highway and you'll see fresh corn for sale and, local berries or pick your own. They're always along the highway, so it doesn't matter what season, you can always find fresh food that way. And then I would come back towards the city and head more west and go towards Stratford. So that region is known for pork, so you definitely want to have some bacons and pork belly and all that kind of fun stuff. So in Stratford, there's a bacon and an ale trail. That's my personal favorite.
I'm in. Done. Done.
Yeah. Also, there's a chocolate trail there and a new maple trail. So there's lots of food things to do there. Lots of cooking classes. It's known for the Stratford Chef School, which is a iconic Canadian chef school, and really high-end restaurants because of the Stratford Shakespeare Festival Theatre. So I check out the Stratford area for fine dining and then go off to Niagara, which is another wine region. So Niagara, well known for ice wine and a ton of different wineries. I mean, there's festivals every weekend and all year round as well. So Ice Wine Festival in the winter, you have your tailgate party, New Vintage Festival in the spring. Really, really great wineries, and Niagara on the Lake is beautiful as well. So, I mean, that would take you a little while. Ontario's pretty big, like you said, but those are some definitely not to miss places.
Is there a best time of year to go?
I personally love the late summer and fall. I like the food festivals that are in the fall because they're celebrating the harvest season, a lot of them. So from pumpkins to, all that really great food. And a lot of the fall fair, like the actual fall fairs happen. And those are more in rural areas. But you get a real authentic, I guess, taste of place at that time. And the colors, I mean, we have so many forests and, natural beauty in Canada and Ontario, and that way you'd see all the colors change. When you go up a little bit north into the Muskoka area, you could see.
Oh, but that's gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me about some of the big can't-miss food festivals and food events that we should check out.
Well, I might be a little biased here, but
all right. So Stratford Fair.
So come to Savor Stratford. That was I'm the founder of that festival, and that was sort of my baby, and it was. We've won a ton of awards. So
talk to me about that. First of all, congratulations. How does a food festival win awards? Like, what are the awards that a food festival can win?
Well, we won one that was a tourism award. That was last year, and that was probably the biggest. That was the event of the year. So it wasn't even around food. It was up against all the events in Ontario and we won that at the tourism conference last year. And for us, they're looking at festivals and events that are, attracting a certain number of people, and that they just have an experience that the tourist is looking for. And so, I mean, last year in 2012, we had about 27,000 people to Stratford. So it grew within 5 years. I mean, it's a festival that doesn't have soft drinks, for example. It's local drinks. It has all Ontario wine, all Ontario food. You had to be a local farmer to participate. There's a ton of tastings and chef's demos and cooking classes and live music, all by local artists. So it was really a celebration of that particular place.
What's interesting to me about that is, 27,000 people is a lot of people.
Yes.
To feed. And then when you say, and by the way, we can't serve them the McRib, it's got to be all local food. Like Coca-Cola can't come in.
That's right.
Is that a lot for local producers do they have to gear up for this festival?
Absolutely, they do, yes. And that's part of the work that you do, though, to be honest, in food tourism. You have to make sure that those chains or those food chains are working properly so that the farmers are producing enough food, and also for the restaurants year-round so that they can be supplying local food on a regular basis. So that's a lot of the business-to-business work that we do and that we help regions do through our work here at OCTA. But definitely, we would reach out to farms, like berry farms, that would then make juice for the festival. But we're not only giving them value-added suggestions, so like giving them new ideas and new products to produce for this festival, but something that they're now able to sell in retail shops across the region, right? So, for example, this one farmer that's a berry farmer, they created a raspberry juice just for the festival, and now that it's a really well-known product, and they now do raspberry and apple, and it's all made from fruit from their farm.
So a festival like this is a great way for local artisanal food producers to launch.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Savor Stratford, we got to put on the list. What else in the Ontario region?
In Toronto, I love the Stops Night Market. I thought it was a really well done event. It's 2 days. There's a rumor that they may expand it next year again, and it's a market, basically pop-up restaurant that happen. It's in an alleyway, and it's a fundraiser for the Stop, which is a community food center here in Toronto, and they will be launching them across Canada, actually. It's a really good event. It's not pretentious. It's not very expensive to attend. You sample all night long, local beer, local wine, that kind of thing. I also love, there's a series of events at the Drake Hotel called 86th. So 86 Mondays, and 86 as a restaurant term. So it's a lot of industry people, so chefs and servers and sommeliers on their day off, which is normally Monday, and they come hang out at the Drake. But Ivy Knight, who curates the events, she brings in experts. So you can have different tastings. Every Monday is a different theme, and they have like pickle smackdown or oyster shucking contest. Very cool, really great way to taste the region, and especially for tourists, because it's a backdoor, kind of inside door scoop, place that you should go on a Monday.
And that's the Drake Hotel.
I also love the Niagara Festivals, and it was hard for me to pick one. I think the Ice Wine Festival, because it's at a unique time, so it's January, I believe, but we're known for our ice wine, and you can actually go and help pick the frozen grapes and actually help and see them make it and then do tastings. I think that's really unique to Ontario.
And for people who have not experienced ice wine before, talk a little bit about it and what makes it different.
Well, ice wine, it's about when it's harvested, and there's quite a few producers now that do it in Ontario, but they basically pick the grapes when they're still on the vine and they're frozen, and it's like a dessert wine. It reminds me of Sauternes or like a really sweet Riesling.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are picked when they're frozen, the sugars, are captured in the grape.
So you mentioned ice wine, you mentioned butter tarts. I mean, what are some of the quintessential Ontario foods, like the signature dishes or the signature foods that people should try when they're up there?
I would say definitely pork, because I think it's probably different than what you get in the States. We have a lot of farmers that are focusing on particular breeds and the way that they're feeding them. For example, there's boar in Perth County that they're fed walnuts that I would recommend people look out for, and you can actually find it on menus across the province. It is Perth pork products.
Walnut-fed pork?
Walnut-fed, boar.
Wow.
Yeah, really, really good, and it provides a really unique flavor. He also, that same farmer is known for his Tamworth, so some of the most unbelievable bacon I've ever tried, and that's something that you can actually find on the Bacon and Ale Trail in Stratford. But just, producers that are really good at their craft. I would also say maple syrup, very much Ontario. You'll see it on menus everywhere in, March, April when it's being produced, and you'll see the trees tapped as you drive through.
That's some good dishes. All right, there we go. And then talk to me about some of the chefs. I mean, who are some of the chefs who are really putting Ontario on the map there, and that we're starting to hear from down in the States?
Well, Jamie Kennedy is probably a chef that you'll hear of. Jamie Kennedy Kitchen. So he has restaurants in Toronto. He has a farm in Prince Edward County, and also a new restaurant in Niagara. Definitely known for his local food connections and farmer chef connections. I really like Carl Heinrich and Ryan Donovan at Richmond Station. So Carl actually won Top Chef Canada a couple of years ago. He's a Stratford Chef School grad as well, and just really, really innovative. They, again, watch the farmer walk through his restaurant on a Thursday at noon with a pig over his shoulder. And they have invested in the craft of being a chef, so they've invested in teaching their staff how to butcher whole animals to make the what they're doing sustainable and economical for their restaurant model, and I think they do a really great job. We also have, Jeff Crump. He's Earth to Table and Ancaster Old Mill, and now involved in a bunch of restaurants. But he has an amazing seasonal cookbook called Earth to Table. Suther Lee is another chef that has Lee Restaurant and went on to New York. Mark McEwen, North 44. Lynn Crawford. She has a show on the Food Network. Her restaurant is in Toronto, Ruby Watchco. Stephen Treadwell, he's Treadwell Farm to Table. Again, that's Niagara region. One of the chefs, there's actually a group of chefs, so it's called the Group of 7 Chefs, and Scott Vivian is involved in that. He's from Beast Restaurant. I would definitely recommend looking him up and what they're doing as a group of chefs that each own their own restaurants and what they're doing together. They've been in New York, and they do a bunch of events.
No shortage is what I'm hearing. There's a ton of good chefs. You mentioned the Food Network Canada. Tell me, as a food tourism professional, talk to me about the role that some of these TV networks or even TV shows like Top Chef, what role do they play in food tourism?
For Top Chef Canada, I think that show has helped regions and chefs. It doesn't work for every chef, and it shouldn't, though. But I think, they do partner with different regions within Ontario, and I've seen different producers highlighted. So I think that helps, with brand awareness. I think in the beginning, the Food Network really helped to educate people about food and maybe think that they know a little bit more than what they actually do.
Is that a double-edged sword?
I think so, a little bit. Yeah. I think, maybe 10 years ago or more, someone that wasn't used to ordering duck confit on a menu or having foie gras, I think that's changed now because of things like the Food Network. But
people are more open to experiencing new things, you think?
I hope so.
All right, so we are going to take a quick break here. Then we're going to come back. We're going to find out about the history of butter tarts, because I'm very curious now. We're going to get a restaurant recommendation from you, and we're going to play a game called Out of the Frying Pan.
Great.
Before we get back to Danielle, I do want to talk about the Taste Trekkers Food Tourism Conference. She is going to be speaking there. She's also going to be part of the panel discussion. We've got a lot of great people and great things happening at this conference. Here's the deal. It is the nation's first food tourism conference. This is an event for anybody who plans their vacation around foods. So if that's you, when you find out you're going somewhere, the first thing you do is go, okay, where are we going to go eat? What restaurant are we going to go to? What are we going to go check out? Then this is the event for you. We've got people coming in to talk about chocolate from Madagascar. We've got people coming in to talk about the history of rum in New England. We've got people coming in to talk about ceviche from Peru. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. So you want to sign up, get your tickets September 20th, 21st, and 22nd in Providence, Rhode Island, and check out the website, tastetrekkers.com. We've got all the details there. You can find out everything that's going on. Okay, we are talking to Danielle Brodhagen of the Ontario Culinary Tourism Alliance. Before that, you were over at in Stratford, where you really put Stratford on the map from a culinary perspective. Among other things, you were working on the Savor Stratford Festival. And you are coming to speak at the Taste Trekkers Food Tourism Conference next month, September 20th, 21st, 22nd in Providence, Rhode Island. You're going to be part of the panel discussion, which I think is going to be really fascinating, because we're going to be talking about food tourism, which is what you do day in and day out. And, like you said, it's something that people have been doing, but it's sort of new as sort of a concept and something that people really need to delve into. And you guys have really elevated it to a science over there in Ontario.
We have. That's the experience of working with so many different regions and being open to what that region has to offer. Okay,
you had a trivia question for me.
So the question is, when and where were the first butter tarts made in Ontario? So I'm looking for the first recorded recipe.
I want to think that there's some really romantic story about, I don't know, some little mom and pop shop bakery.
Nice.
Yeah, I want to...
Think of more of a small town. So, before there were even bakeries, where were the cookbooks coming from? Well, maybe this is only true for Ontario, but...
Right. I don't know. I'll say 1910.
Very close. So dating back to 1900.
Okay.
So 1900, and actually in the first cookbook that it was recorded was 1915. And it was the Women's Royal Victoria Hospital cookbook. So back at that time, especially in smaller communities. And this one came from Barrie, actually, so north of Toronto. A lot of women's groups and churches made cookbooks at that time. So this one came from a hospital.
Okay, that makes sense.
1915 pie cookbook.
The first butter tart and is that considered, one of the first butter tarts in North America then?
Probably, yeah, because I don't think it's definitely a Canadian dessert. And still is. I mean, it's a sense of pride for a lot of women to be able to make butter tarts. Like I remember, my grandmother, and I come from a Mennonite background, as many of us do in Ontario, but my grandmother really needed to know how to make the pastry and pass that on. So
every family has their own index card that's, yellowed and been in the family for 3 generations and gets passed. Nice.
Definitely. Or the cookbook that's like it's a 3-ring binder type cookbook,
I understand. I asked you for a restaurant recommendation. I said in all of Ontario, I don't know how you narrowed it down to just one, but I said, we're coming to Ontario. Tell me where we should go.
I chose Langdon Hall. Because it's a hotel as well, so Relais Chateau property. And that might sound a bit intimidating, but what they do really well is the barbecue series, which is why I went there on Friday. And the head chef is Jonathan Gushue.
Okay, so first of all, where is Langdon Hall?
Langdon Hall is in Cambridge area, but not right in the city. That would make it about 40 minutes from Toronto, 40 or 50 minutes from Toronto.
Tell me, like you said, a little bit about the chef there.
So Jonathan Gushue, he's a Relais Chateau chef. He's a Grand Chef, so has numerous awards as well, and actually is from Newfoundland, I think. And he's trained all over the world. Loves connecting with his local farmers and producers, and actually has a chef's garden at Langdon Hall that is absolutely stunning. So you see, when I was staying there, you have to walk through the garden, the vegetable garden, to get to the pool. And so when I was there walking through with my daughter, we saw the chef picking their food that they were serving at us that night. Like, amazing. And all their preserves are made from the vegetables grown on site. They have honey, just incredible. And so that was really inspiring to see. And Jonathan knows his producers. Like, he has relationships with them. He's really good friends with Monforte cheesemaker Ruth Clausen. So you always see her cheese on the menu, which is a really great Ontario cheese. And he's just really passionate. And then his dishes always look really beautiful.
All right, so I walk in. Tell me a little bit about the vibe of the place. I mean, what does it look like? What does it feel like?
Well, it's a Relais Chateau property, and it's a destination. So you're going to drive up this really long, kind of winding driveway, and you're going to see this mansion. My daughter called it a castle. She's 2.5, and when she saw it, she said it looked like a castle. Stunning. You drive up, you get out of your car, and they'll park your car for you. That's just an included service, whether you're dining there or going to the spa or, just want to take a walk on the grounds. So you'll walk in, and there's a fireplace. There's usually their dog sitting there, and then they have their concierge sort of check-in service. And you walk through a few more fireplaces, and you'll see their dining room. The dining room is beautiful. I mean, you'd want to probably dress up to dine there, tablecloths and white linen napkins and all of that stunning silverware, which can be intimidating for some people, but they've done these Friday night barbecues very well. So for the barbecue, you actually are going to be dining outside, and they have this tree that's over 100 years old that just sprawls over it created a canopy over the backyard, so a garden setting, and they've put little white lights underneath it, so when it is dark, it's just all lit up with these white lights, and then they have these white tents and umbrellas set up all throughout the backyard. And that's where I like to eat. It's more casual, it's comfortable, you have a pond right there, you can...
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So we get seated outside, we're looking over the menu, you've got an appetizer that you want to recommend?
I really like the poached chicken terrine, which was a good way to start, but they also had a great mussels dish. Mussels, I think, à la nage, they called it, and it was with cherry tomatoes and a really nice broth and fresh dill, and they had the patty pan squash that you sort of grill that reminds me of avocado. So that dish also stands out, and it was nice and summery. And
what about main dishes as we turn towards that? And I realize that it's going to change from time to time, but what do you recommend?
Jonathan does really great pickerel, so local pickerel, and I imagine it's probably coming from Huron County, so Lake Huron. and he's really good at fish. It's delicate, usually with a great light sauce or broth. I also would recommend if there's his duck confit on the menu, so any duck dish that he does, I'd recommend that. And then if you're if you're eating off the bar menu, which I did for lunch one day while I was there, their burger is awesome. But it's cooked medium rare and served with these really amazing fries and homemade ketchup and homemade mayonnaise.
I love like a really well done fancy burger.
Yeah, me too.
That's hard to beat. Talk to me about drinks. What are we pairing with this meal?
The Ontario wine selection is really good, actually, and they have a sommelier there that can explain, what wine should go with your dinner or your lunch. But they feature Taz Winery out of Niagara, and so I'd recommend the Pinot Noir.
And for dessert?
Dessert, I'm a chocolate girl.
Nothing wrong with that.
They have a dark chocolate flourless cake that I had on the weekend that was really amazing.
This sounds like a place we're going to make a weekend out of.
I would. I mean, you don't really want to leave when you're there. I actually said to one of the servers when we were there this weekend that, how do I make this my local? This is the place you retreat to every weekend. But it's really beautiful, really relaxing.
What is a meal here going to cost us?
Well, the barbecue series is, I think, $69 a person, and then you can add on a wine pairing. So I would say around $75 for a dinner and less for lunch.
And this is Canadian, of course.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool. Thank you for the recommendation. Are you ready to play a game?
Yes.
Okay, this game is called Out of the Frying Pan. Here's how it works. I'm going to ask you for a series of rapid-fire recommendations, and we're covering all of Ontario.
Okay.
So you just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Let's start with butter tarts. You mentioned them. They were your trivia question. Where is the best place to get a butter tart in Ontario?
I would say your local market co-op, and you would want to try the bacon butter tarts by Madeline's Diner in Stratford. In Stratford.
Why do I have a feeling a lot of answers are going to come from Stratford?
I'm going to try not to do that.
I understand. You got to go with what you know, right? Tell me about ice wines. Is there a particular ice wine that you like that people should try when they come to Ontario?
Yes, I would say, there's a dessert wine that I like, Chateau Charmes dessert wine. So it's a Riesling, late harvest Riesling. Ice wine, I would say Peller Estate.
What about Canadian beers? Is there a favorite local brew that comes from Ontario?
There is. Craft breweries are also exploding here, as they are everywhere. I really like Bose from the Ottawa area, and that's definitely something when you come to Ontario you have to taste. You
talked about the pork a little bit. Do you have a favorite either butcher shop or farm where you go to get pork?
Perth Pork Products out of Sebringville, Ontario, and he's the one that does that wild boar that I was talking about, and the Tamworth pork, and you can find that on restaurant menus. Look for Perth Pork Products.
Let's say I'm taking a vacation up to Ontario, and I've got kids in tow. Any great restaurants to take kids to? In Toronto, I like the pizza shop. There's Pizza Libretto, and really great for kids. It's already a little bit noisy and a fast-paced restaurant, and the pizza's really good. What about farmers markets? Is there a great farmers market to go visit? Yes, in Toronto, Leslieville Market. It's amazing for families. So it's Sunday, 10 till 2, and they have live music. All the farmers grow their own food. They have mini pop-up sort of restaurants there, making food on the spot. There's amazing fish tacos from Hooked there. And then in the summer, at noon till 2, they open up the splash pad, and there's a park. So it's full of families and really great vibe. And you're the expert, so I'm going to ask you one last question. I want you to make a prediction. Where do you see the field of food tourism in 5 years? Well, I think that you'll see a lot more restaurants all over the world really calling out where their food's coming from. I'd like to see that. So whether that's naming farms on menus or just educating their servers so that when someone asks, where is this chicken from, that you'll be able to tell me the story about the farm or about the region that it's from. I think you also see a lot more sort of hands-on experiences. So you could go maybe to a farm and actually get your hands dirty and pick vegetables, or you could, join a cooking class or a butchery class. I think you're going to see a lot more of that happening 5 years. And I think that you'll see
families taking part in activities like that, as well as couples, and go to a dairy and join a cheesemaker and make cheese and take it home, or make your own yogurt. That kind of thing. I think people really want that hands-on experience.
In other words, people are going to finally, for the first time in a couple generations, know where their food is coming from.
Absolutely.
All right. Fantastic. You did a fantastic job. Thank you for playing the game. Thank you for the restaurant recommendation, Langdon Hall, which is at 1 Langdon Drive in Cambridge, Ontario. People can find it online at langdonhall.ca. Also, they can find you. You are going to be speaking, like I said, at the Taste Trekkers Food Tourism Conference, September 20th, 21st, and 22nd. The actual panel discussion is happening the afternoon of the 21st in Providence, Rhode Island. What about if people want to find out more about the Ontario Culinary Tourism Alliance? If they want to find out more about what that does or follow you on social media, how can they do that?
Well, the website is ontarioculinary.com. For more information on what to do in Ontario, there is a culinary adventure guide that you can download that is up to date, just produced this spring, with lots of recommendations. It's a big province, so we have a lot of them. And you can follow me personally on Twitter at Brodhagen, so DBRODHAGEN, or Octalicious, so it's OCTA_licious is our Ontario Culinary.
And if somebody is looking to make their location a culinary destination and they want to reach out to you guys, because I know you guys are the experts up there, how should they do that?
They can email myself at danielleb@ontarioculinary.com. Check out the website, give us a call, and we'll meet with you and let you know what it takes. Most likely it means a visit to your region and really looking at what you have, but we're excited to do that. Well,
thank you so much for coming on. This has been fantastic. We covered a lot of stuff for the first time on this podcast today, and I'm really excited about this interview, and I can't wait to see you next month in Providence. So thanks so much.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for having us.
My name is Seth Ressler. A couple show notes before we go. First of all, Taste Trekkers Food Tourism Conference. Please head over to the website, tastetrekkers.com, and check it out. Also, we should note that this is a new website, tastetrekkers.com. We just relaunched it. We folded all of the mystery meat stuff in there, including this podcast, so it now lives over at tastetrekkers.com. So please spend some time on the new website, check it out, see what it's all about, find out all about the Food Tourism Conference. Come out and join us in September. While you're on the website, you can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes. Please leave a review. That helps us out quite a bit. You can also follow us on Twitter or on Facebook. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast, you want to come on and tell us about the culinary scene in your region, please just click the Contact Us link and send us an email, and we would love to have you on. Thanks so much for listening.
This is the Fine Dining Podcast. You can find links to the places mentioned in this episode at tastetrekkers.com. Tastetrekkers.com. Thank you for listening.